Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephania Fulleda, and I'm a fellow for the Women's Public Leadership Network. WPLN is a 501(c)(3) nonprofit dedicating to educating, organizing, and inspiring women to run for public office at all levels and become effective leaders when they arrive. We are so excited to be joined by Erin Perrine. She's a Republican strategist at Axiom Strategies. So, Erin, we're so glad to have you. I was just wondering if you could just briefly introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie, and thanks for having me join today. As she said, my name is Erin Perrine. I'm originally from Rochester, New York. I have worked on Capitol Hill and campaigns across the country. I've worked for Republicans, including Paul Ryan, Ron Johnson, Ted Cruz, Kevin McCarthy, John Thune, Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis. So I've kind of run the gamut in Republican politics. Now I'm on the strategist side of things and graduated from the University of Connecticut. So I'm a diehard UConn basketball fan and a huge Buffalo Bills fan. So that's the long and short of it.
That's awesome. Just to kind of head back to the beginning, could you just tell us how you got interested in politics in the first place?
Yeah, growing up, my grandfather was a city court judge. So we used to march in parades as kids for my grandfather in our homemade t-shirts. And on the front said, "Send my grandpa back to court." And on the back said, "Reelect Judge Gary E. Smith." And that's really where it started. And it kind of just blossomed, throughout my life.
Wow, that sounds awesome. I want one of those t-shirts.
They were great. They were like a yellow with black, like felt iron-on letters. They were perfectly 90s.
Were there any mentors that really encouraged you to just keep pursuing your goals earlier on in your career?
Yeah, I was really fortunate that I had a number of mentors, and actually, my biggest mentors have been women in politics. My Girl Scout leader growing up is a woman by the name of Pam Baker. She was a fundraiser in Western New York, and she had worked for a number of Republicans and a number of candidates, and she always pushed me to pursue politics. And I didn't think I was going to do politics. I thought, I maybe would do something with horseback riding. I was on the team at UConn. It was like a fun thing, but I enjoyed politics and government and history, but I didn't really see it as really a career path. And Mrs. Baker really pushed me to do that in some ways. And so in 2008, she encouraged me to intern at the Republican National Convention in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. And John McCain was the nominee at the time. And that internship really, really changed my life. I became really addicted to politics and campaigning right then. And my boss from that was a woman by the name of Kirsten Hopkins. And Kirsten's still part of my life, as is Mrs. Baker. And Kirsten helped me get my first job out of college when I was graduating. Didn't know what I really wanted to do. I got my degree in political science. I knew I liked politics, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I was going to go teach horseback riding lessons in Maryland until I kind of figured out what I wanted to do. And Kirsten was like, "No, absolutely not. Do you want to go to Wisconsin or Nevada?" And I was like, "Well, where are you in this campaign cycle?" She said, "Wisconsin." I was like, "All right, let's go to Wisconsin." And so I got my first job as a field director on Senator Ron Johnson's first campaign back in 2010. And so I was really lucky to have women who in my career have not only helped me get jobs and continue to move forward in my career, but have been there to push me and to be sounding boards even to today.
I was a Girl Scout too when I was little, and I still have a lot of connections to my leaders, and I'm so grateful for all that they have helped me in my career goals. So that's so awesome that you have a very similar story.
I love that.
Yes. Now, getting more into your current experience, as we know, campaign work is not easy, but it can be so rewarding. So, can you just tell us what has kept you in this field and how you got to your current position?
Yeah, I've kind of spent my career going back and forth between campaigns and official work. So I was on Ron Johnson's 2010 campaign, and that was great. We won. We beat an 18-year incumbent. I had never even been to Wisconsin, and I just up and moved and took the opportunity and lived there. And we beat Russ Feingold. That was a very big race in 2010. And then I moved to Albany, New York, and I spent a year working in member services for the New York State Assembly. And that was my first opportunity to do a little bit of policy work, but more comms work. And I really have been more communications and media and press focused in my career. And that's really where that kind of started. And then I went back on the campaign trail in 2012. My boss from the 2010 campaign put my resume in for Paul Ryan in 2012. And so I moved to Janesville, Wisconsin. One thing I did in my career was, especially in the earlier part, I wasn't afraid to say yes. And so that meant I'd never been to Wisconsin. Cool. I'll drive 12 hours and go live in La Crosse, Wisconsin and not know a single soul and figure it out and have a great time. And so Paul ended up being Mitt Romney's running mate in 2012. So what was a congressional reelect ended up also having some overlap with the presidential. And so we won the congressional reelect, but didn't win the presidential. But to be able to see a bit of that bigger game of politics and kind of what presidentials even looked like from my very limited vantage point, I was really interested. Then I moved to DC because between 2008 and 2013, I had been moving consistently, between graduating college, moving to Wisconsin, coming back to New York, moving back to Wisconsin. I was a little burnt out and I kind of wanted to not do, I took the off year, right? So I moved to DC and worked at a telephone town hall firm and sold telephone town halls and taught horseback riding lessons on the weekends. And one of my students from that is a woman by the name of Laura Dove. And she worked in the U.S. Senate with Mitch McConnell. Title was Secretary of the Senate. So she ran the floor operations on behalf of Republicans and Senator McConnell, Leader McConnell. And she was like, hey, the Senate Republican Conference is hiring. They're looking for a deputy press secretary and this role of focus on the floor. And I really wasn't loving selling telephone town halls. It wasn't super fun, but it definitely taught me the bit of the like other work that goes into campaigns, patch through programs and things like that. I definitely learned stuff in that job. So then moving forward to work with Laura, I went over to conference, and that's when I started working for John Thune. And Senator Thune is one of the most wonderful people I've ever met, let alone had the opportunity to work for. Just an absolutely wonderful guy. It was the third ranking leadership office. And so that was my first time on Capitol Hill. I worked for Senator Thune for 3 years in that role, became press secretary at conference. And at about the 3-year mark, my boss said that Kevin McCarthy was looking for a national press secretary. And she said, it's the best of both worlds. If you get the job and you go over and you work for the number 2 in the House, that's great. You'll get House experience. You'll get more national experience. And if you don't, you stay with us. That's even better for us. But we want to help you continue to move forward. Great. I got the job with Kevin, and I worked for Kevin for 2 years before I got recruited to the Trump campaign. And went out there and was the director for press communications on a presidential. And so taking that time away from campaigning, the 5 years I spent on Capitol Hill, not only did I really grow in my profession as a comms professional, but it gave me time to step away. It is very grueling on campaigns. And so in my career, the kind of back and forth I've done has allowed me to stay fresher in wanting to go back on the trail, because every time I leave a campaign, I'm like, I'm done. I'm not doing it again. It's so exhausting. It's grueling. And then I give myself a year and another opportunity presents itself. And so off I go back to another campaign. It happened again in 2023. I got offered the opportunity to go be the communications director for the outside super PAC supporting Ron DeSantis's presidential bid. It never backed down. And that, was a wild 10 months of my career. And now I'm back on the consulting side of things. So I don't have to move again. I lived in Atlanta for the DeSantis project. I don't have to move. So I've got clients all over the country right now that I'm helping support in their races. But I get to do it from DC, which is nice. So I think my back and forth in times of working on the Hill, but then going back to campaigns, I think it's what's kept me from not completely burning out. Some people can do it all the time. They can go from one to the other. I'm not one of those people.
Wow, Erin, you have an impressive resume. You've done so much. And you honestly answered our next question, but I'm just going to ask it to see if you have anything else you'd like to add. So, what tricks helped you manage the negativity that is so often associated with campaigns while you were in it?
Yeah, I very much try to protect my mental health and my mental space as much as I can. And I make that a priority for myself. The mute button on Twitter is a fabulous button. I don't let people into my space that are going to say negative and heinous things. And people have said very negative and heinous things about me on the internet. And that's, but I don't let that into my personal space and into my mind. And if I do, then I can, I'm like everybody else. I can get upset, I can spiral, but I've really made it a priority to put my mental health as a top thing that I worry about with myself, because it is very easy to internalize that negativity from people that you don't know. And that's what I consistently remind myself. I don't let people I wouldn't give credence to take any of my mental space or my mental health from me. And it is paramount that I go to therapy. I've got no problem saying that. I work out, I walk my dog, I have priorities, and I make it a priority not only maintain my mental health, but keep a separation between my life and my job. Because in my earlier years, I was all go, all gas, no brakes. And my life became my job in a lot of ways. And I've got no problem giving my job 100% of my focus, but I protect my personal time and my personal space as much as I can, so that when I am at work, I don't let that negativity affect me, and that I know what's important to me, what I value, what my core values are. And that just means I don't let that hate resonate in my life, and I protect that space as much as I can.
And I imagine that's gotten harder since social media has changed so much in literally just the last 5 years. While, like, when I talked to my mom was like 10 years ago in her career, like, that was never, like, having to handle, like, people commenting on your stuff was never a thing for her. So now it's something she's navigating now. And it's so interesting to me because I was kind of like, that's the world I was introduced to.
Yeah.
But that's awesome. Just,
I don't let random people comment on my tweets, because
yeah.
generally it has nothing to do with what I tweet about. And it's just heinous negative things.
Yeah, it's
And
not related. Yeah.
I don't read replies. I don't look for myself on Twitter. I don't search for myself. I keep my Instagram private, as like, this is me as a person and not as a public figure or as a professional. And so I keep those safeguards up for my own mental health, and people might not appreciate that. But for me, it is 100% more important that I don't let that noise into my life, because there is plenty of it. And it can, not that it's even a fair comparison, but the little bit of hate I get, the like very minuscule amount I get, I can only imagine what it's like to be a real famous person. And the amount of internet trolls and hate. And listen, I'm a diehard sports fan. There are times where I'll be like, man, come on, like Stephon Diggs, catch that ball. Like, you're a top receiver. What are you doing? And like, it also makes me more aware of how I present, even if I'm just talking basketball, or I'm talking about Dan Hurley or Cam Spence. I could talk about any number of athletes and coaches, but there are people that sit on the other side of that. And you don't know how, even if you are a sports fan or a political fan, how that might reach them. And so I'm very conscious now, not only what I let in my space, but what I put out as well.
That's amazing. Kind of transitioning to women who are looking to go on the election trail.
Mm-hmm.
It comes with a certain set of challenges, as we know. So could you just tell us a little about your experience as a woman, especially being in senior positions, and how that has affected your career?
Yeah. The great news is that in a lot of my career, I saw women, especially on campaigns and in politics and in government, in leadership roles. My boss, Kirsten, was the finance director on Ron Johnson's campaign. My chief of staff when I worked for Kevin McCarthy was a woman by the name of Barrett. She is a powerhouse. My deputy chief of staff when I worked for John Thune was a woman. So I have seen women really excel and succeed. When I was on the Trump campaign, most of the senior leadership, the director level, were women. Whether it was coalitions or fundraising or any number of things, there were women at the top all across the board. As a woman, especially as one with a bit of a public profile, the way I have one, it's been good to see other women succeed. And it comes with the negativity of you get a lot of really nasty, for lack of like sexual harassment on the internet. It comes with a lot of it. But to be a woman in this industry, it means you have to be 10 times smarter and work 10 times harder than the guys. And you can behave the same exact way a guy does. And he's a boss. And as a woman, no matter what, you can say the same thing a man just said and say it in the same way. And it will be taken that you're emotional. That is always a word that people try to use to discredit women coming from a place of strength. Oh, you're emotional. And so I've always been very conscious, especially as I've grown in my career, of making sure that I watch what the women around me have done to succeed. And I take that and I mirror that, and I try and make sure that I don't give people the opportunity to criticize me for anything other than being a voice in the arena. They may not agree with what I say, but they're not going to say I was bombastic or the B word or whatever, right? So I've been blessed to see a lot of women succeed. I work for an incredible woman right now, Kristen Davison, at Axiom. She was the CEO at Never Back Down. And she is, the way her mind works is unbelievable to me. She is just a powerhouse. And I see that and I'm like, yes, I want to be more of that. So I always take the strong women around me and try to mirror that and continue to grow as my own person to say, I'm a woman in this industry. Nothing drives me more crazy than saying like, oh, you should vote for someone because she's a woman, or you should do something because you're a woman. No, I should have this opportunity because I am the best fit for the job. I am excellent in my profession. I work hard to maintain my professional contacts with reporters and media. And that is why I'm given these opportunities. And you know, when you live that campaign life, it is 24 hours. It is very all consuming. And so that's the hardest part is, yes, you see other women succeed and I love it. But still protecting the time to still be a person outside of a career that wants to consume all of your time. And I'm just, like I said, I've been very fortunate to have incredible female mentors and bosses throughout my career. And I still get to do that now.
That's awesome. And we're seeing more and more women joining and leading in the campaign work. So that's hopefully the culture will begin to change and we won't have to, and hopefully in 10 years, we won't be having to hear all these comments that you sadly have had to hear in your career. But for our last question, what tips do you have for women who are looking to get into the campaign world?
My first tip is don't be afraid to say yes. Take the opportunity. If you want to get on a campaign and somebody says, move to Florida, move to North Carolina, move to Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Nevada, New Mexico, go, do it. There will be a million reasons to stay where you are, where you're living, what your life looks like. And the opportunity to go on a campaign really is only that one campaign, that one cycle. Maybe you'll win, maybe you won't. But if you can get on a campaign and go, especially into a presidential swing state, you got to do it. Like just run where you can and take those opportunities, because I've had a crazy career. It's been all over the place. I've worked for a lot of people. I've worked in a lot of very public places. And I am, even with all of the ups and downs in my career, I am in a better place now, both work-wise and personally, than I've ever been in my life. And that's because I said all those yeses along the way. That is the biggest piece of advice. And the other thing I would always say, and this is what I tell myself, is nobody is ever going to knock someone for what they do to you They will care how you react.
Mm.
And so no matter what people say about me on the internet or in work professionally or whatever the case may be, that person will always generally be given a pass. How I react to them and how I respond to them, how anybody responds to somebody who comes at them or makes a comment or whatever it is, that is what you are judged by. It doesn't, the other person could say the worst things in the world about you. And if you fly off the handle or you react negatively, that is what they will carry about you. And that's what they will remember about you. Wasn't that, oh, someone said something really awful and heinous and she reacted, or someone was very rude or disrespectful, or somebody was X, Y, or Z. You just have to make sure that how you react is always 100% above board and that you always pursue your career in a place of ethics, that you know at the end of the day, your ethics are unimpeachable and people may not like what you say, but they can't knock how you say it. And so that is, those are two things. Always say yes and be conscious of your response, because your response is what people judge you on, not what somebody did to you.
Erin, that was amazing advice that I'm probably going to use in my own life, even if I don't do the campaign work. But thank you so much for joining us today on this Monday. This was so insightful for me as someone who's possibly looking at a career in politics, and I know it's going to help so many other women who will listen to this in the future.
Well, thanks. I really appreciate that. And one other thing I will say is campaigns come and go. So if you decide you might have like a little bit of a burning to want to go and do a campaign, do it. Because it's one thing I love about campaigns. Maybe you don't love it when you're doing it, but there's a hard end date. No matter what, election day will come and then you can go pursue another campaign or pursue policy or pursue another career or pursue something else. But campaigns are just this one little glimmer in time that you get to be part of something bigger. And so if you ever feel like the slightest itch to do it, I say always absolutely do it, because it's never forever in campaigns. It's never forever in politics. And so that's one of the things I love about politics, is the ability to flex and do those different things.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.